The new tournament in the LEC called Versus starts on the 17th of January, marking the start of a new LEC winter split. Going into this season, roster changes has happened, which is what we will look into today. We will go through every team in the LEC, discussing every roster change, staff change, major changes, what is expected of the first tournament in this year called Versus. First off, we have Fnatic. In the 2025 season, Fnatic had mixed results qualifying for the world as third seed in the LEC, but suffering an early elimination in the Switch stage with an 0-3 record. Fnatic did well throughout the season, finishing third in the early winter split playoffs, fourth in the spring split playoffs, and securing the important third place in the summer split playoffs, earning them a spot at Worlds. In this off-season, Fnatic has had one of the slowest and complicated off-seasons in their history, finalizing their roster late compared to many other of the LEC teams. In the mid lane, Fnatic has released Poby and signed Vladi, who comes out of a breakout year in 2025 with Karmin corp, having an explosive start to the season and establishing himself as a top tier mid laner in the LEC, leading Karmin corp to their first ever LEC title in the winter split, defeating G2 in a 3-0 sweep and being named the finals MVP. I believe getting a young and aggressive talent such as Vladi could help Fnatic go a long way this season. The pairing of an aggressive talented mid laner allows for Rosszak to play his chaotic high tempo style with a partner that can keep up mechanically. Something to note is that Vladi seems to have a high variance, either being one of the best in Europe, but he also seems to be able to struggle with the pressure and burnout which can come from a long season leading to inconsistencies. One more important note is that replacing Poby with Vladi, it frees up an important import spot on the Fnatic team, which they have used to sign the new support Lospa. Lospa is an import player from Korea who has played his early career at the Giantx Academy and in 2025 season for the Spanish Giants Pride team, making him a rookie in the LEC. Going from support with 10 years of Tier 1 experience to a rookie is a bold move by Fnatic. Fnatic's head coach Gabs has compared Lospa to Hillsang, which tells you Fnatic and Gabs expect big things from this rookie. Lospa is mostly known for his aggressive, high-risk, high-reward flanking playstyle, where he specializes in engaged champions like Rill, Nautilus and Alistar. I think it's clear Fnatic is moving to a much more aggressive and unpredictable playstyle looking at these two signings, making them harder to predict, but it can end up being easier to punish if the aggressive engages fail. This move to Lospa also means going from a power bot lane with two established starts, with Upset now for the first time in a long time being the clear veteran in his lane, where he has to provide the stability for Lospa to play his aggressive playstyle. While MKOI and Upset was often praised for their laning phases, Lospa's tendency to roam and find flanks will often leave Upset in a 2v1 situation where Upset shifts from being the main star in the early game to more of an insurance policy for Lospa's roaming. With Korean imports such as Lospa, there's always a big concern, mainly the language barrier, but here Lospa has been highly spoken as having great conversational English, and having already played in Europe makes this less of a concern. Lospa also fits into Code Graph's philosophy, where he'd rather have a bad aggressive play than a player who does nothing. Fnatic also have a new top laner, Empress, who's joining us from the EILs. This move from Oscarin to Empress represents the final piece of Fnatic's 2026 rebuild. Some of you may have heard of Empress on a different name, GX Plank. Empress is dedicated to carry champions such as Fiona, Jax and Camille, which fits into the aggressive and heavy engaged comps it looks like Fnatic will be playing this year. Empress and Vladi also played together back in 2022. If the old duo and the jungler Rosszak can figure out the communication early on, Fnatic could end up with a very high early game tempo that very few teams can match. The move to Vladi and Empress can send Fnatic to be one of the top teams in Europe, if the synergy is there. But if it goes wrong, Fnatic might miss Poby as the 7th consistent veteran player. The signings pairing Vladi, Empress and Lospa send Fnatic in a much more aggressive playstyle. They lose the title as the most experienced team in the LEC, but becomes a terrifying aggressive team with lots of possibilities, and I am excited to see how this Fnatic team will do throughout the Versus tournament. I think these are good signings, and honestly I'm okay with giving Fnatic an A+ for their off-season changes, because I think this looks into the future for Fnatic and a different type of Fnatic. Fnatic is also put in the tire for being a major contender in the LEC. Let's see how they do in the Versus tournament. The next team is G2. In contrast to many teams in the LEC, G2 did not make any roster changes in the 2025-2026 offseason, and their roster still contains Broken Blade, Skumond, Caps, Hansama and LeBron on support. This decision in itself is the roster move. With one of the more successful runs in recent years having a quarterfinal exit at Worlds, this G2 team was the first to break the switch stage curse. Deciding to stay together with the roster and not make any changes might be a smart move for G2 after a successful season. General Manager Romain Bigard and the head coach Dylan Falco are betting that the internal synergy developed during the 2025 World Run is more valuable than any mechanical upgrade. There was off-season rumors about the veteran jungler Inspired who wanted to join G2 after his departure from FlyQuest, and G2 made it clear that they will be sticking with Skumond after his rookie season. And their off-season deserves an A by being able to retain and extend caps throughout to 2027 and stick in with Skumond, who is showing lots of potential. Once again, G2 will be heading into the LEC with the title of the ones to beat. Next is the Giants. The Giants is another team who's decided to retain their roster just like G2. There was talks from Fnatic to buy out the Korean support Jun, with the rumored buyout to be in the range of 180 to 200,000 euros. Giants ended up rejecting the move as they didn't want to empower a direct rival for the 2026 season. Keeping the mid laner Giantx on the team is an excellent move, as he is one of the few mid laners who can consistently keep up with Caps and Humanoid. When making no roster changes, Giants will be hoping that Giantx will make the leap to become a top tier mid laner without the distraction of new players on the roster. There is some staff changes to the Giant. Veteran ex-jungler Maxlaw is joining the Giant as an assistance coach, and it will be exciting to see what he brings to the team. Giants is gambling on the fact that with no roster changes, they can start the season with 100% synergy, while many teams in the LEC need to get used to new players. If the Giants can break their 5th place curse early in the year, they might be a dark horse contender for a spot at Worlds. If this roster has already hit the ceiling though, and it isn't able to improve, fans might start to wonder if the Giants should have taken the money for June to go to Fnatic and try to rebuild the roster. I'm unsure about keeping this team together, and therefore the Giants received a C+ for their offseason. Giants will be, as always, in the upper end of the LEC, trying to break into the top 3. If they do this early in the season and they do improve, they could end up being contenders for a spot at Worlds. Next up we have Karmin Corp. Karmin Corp finalized its roster for the 2026 LEC season with a mix of retained core pieces and strategic additions. The organization focused on strengthening the mid lane and support while keeping its championship winning spine from the 2025 winter split. Karmin Corp has retained the top laner Kana, the jungler Yike, and the AD carry Kalist, while adding the new team members former DRX mid laner Kahu and the FlyQuest support Busio. Busio is a high potential support with LCS experience and has an EU eligibility, preserving that import spot for Karmin Corp, which was then used on picking up Kahu, who has the newest firepower, to the mid lane. While Kana and Yike provides the experienced leadership in top and jungle, they also come with offering an early game stability through the early game pathing and lane control. Keeping these players on the team ensures a strong macro foundation. Adding Kaiho brings new playmaking potential and international solo lane experience from his time in DRX, which could help elevate Karmin Corp's ability to control the tempo through the mid game, which is essential in the LEC meta. Kalist had a breakout year in 2025 and sits on a lot of high carry potential, which now is paired with Busio, who has shown aggression and proactive support plays, strengthening Karmin Corp's teamfight coordination. These moves, they all indicate that Karmin Corp believe in the foundation of the team and want to solidify its identity as a top tier contender in the LEC. For their off-season, Karmin Corp receives a B+ and is expected to be a top 3 team throughout this season. Next up we have Movistar Koi. Movistar Koi had a good 2025 season, showing the world that they can fight with the big boys with a 4th place in the winter split and ending up winning the spring split, defeating Karmin Corp twice, and in the end taking down G2 in a 3-1 win. This was the peak of the year for Movistar Koi. In the summer split, they was runners-up, losing to G2 but securing the 2nd seed in the LEC for Worlds. Movistar represented the LEC at every major international event in 2025, but they did struggle to overcome the Eastern gap, having a disappointing exit at MSI. At the Esports World Cup, they showed more impact and ended up taking the game of the reigning world champions T1 in a 1-2 loss. At Worlds, they didn't make the quarterfinals after going 2-2 in the switch stage, but losing 2-0 versus T1, who went on to win Worlds. Movistar Koi has not made any changes to the roster, but have renewed the contracts for Ilyova, Yoyopun and Alvaro. This shows that head coach Thomas Campbelos believes 25 is just the start for this season. With this in mind, they went and signed ex-LEC pro Alfari as an assistant coach to help strengthening the laning and early game fundamentals. Movistar, just like G2 and Giantx, chose continuity over a team overhaul, putting the trust into this group of players. This team showed a lot of great potential in 2025, and with retaining and extending key players and signing a new assistant coach, I believe that their offseason deserves a B+, and they will be expected to finish in the top 3 in the LEC. Next team on the list is NaVi. NaVi is the newest team to join the LEC, taking over Rogue's spot mid-season in the summer split. After a challenging campaign with a quickly put together roster, NaVi ended the summer split in last place, going over 4 in the group stages. NaVi decided to overhaul most of their roster for the upcoming 2026 season, only keeping AD carry Hansan D. The top laner was to play with Manta, a rising top lane star from the tier 2 leagues, and comes with carry potential and experience from his time in Karmin corp loop. This is a significant upgrade which offers more consistency and macro presence. Turkish jungler Reiklik was signed ahead of the 2026 season and was benched for 6 months and is expected to help with a more purposeful pathing in the jungle and the ability to create more early game pressure than NaVi had in 2025. Joining from Fnatic we have Poby. From sources, NaVi originally targeted Vladdy, who went to Fnatic, and Humanoid, who signed with Vitality. Settling on Poby could end up being a risk. We saw splashes of brilliance during his 2025 season with Fnatic, but it might not be enough for this NaVi team to actually compete. They will be playing Fnatic in week 1 of the LEC Versus tournament, so this is certainly a matchup worth watching to see how this NaVi team plays against Vladdy. One of the biggest criticism of NaVi during the 2025 season was the lack of direction in game. They decided to address this by picking up Paris from BDS. Paris is known for being vocal and opinionated in drafts and will work as the general for this team of young players. One concern with this team is that it's very young. If they start the season with a string of losses, the pressure might get to these young players who is representing a big esports brand like NaVi. I am excited to see what this NaVi team can do in the Versus tournament, but I am skeptical about some signings like Poby. Having a losing team last season, NaVi having a hard time acquiring some top talents, but Poby's problem with his communication in English might end up not being the right pick for NaVi. I like the rest of the roster, which has shown great potential, and I think NaVi will do better than the 2025 season, ending up around the 6 to 7 place in Versus if everything goes well. For their off-season, NaVi mostly did what they needed to do and get rid of the old roster, and therefore receives a B+, and is actually expected this season to be a lower midfield team, who might have a few surprises up their sleeves. Next up we have SK Gaming. Just as NaVi, SK Gaming has come off a bad 2025 season, going 1 for 8 in the winter split, 2 for 7 in the spring split, and 1 for 3 in the summer group stages, ending in last place of Group B. Just like NaVi, SK Gaming has done an almost full roster swap, only keeping their jungler skins. While Fnatic and NaVi is chasing the next generation of rookie, SK took a different approach, signing support Miki and handing him the keys to the Kingdom to build his dream team. After being released from Fnatic, MKOI reportedly had offers but decided to sign with SK Gaming that gave him full autonomy off the roster, bringing in top laners Wonder and mid laner Lida, who is returning to the LEC after some time in the NLC. Wonder is one of the most decorated LEC top laners in history, bringing in multiple titles and international experience, offering stability and experience. Lida brings punch to the mid lane, which is aggressive roam potential. He's a higher risk move, but he is world class on melee assassins like Zed, Irelia and Akali, but historically has struggled against control mages. Last, the AD carry Yopai signed from Vitality B and was considered the best AD carry in the ERs last season. Pairing him with a veteran like Giantx could bring him as a contender for Rookie of the Season if SK plays well. Another big change for the SK roster is moving their entire operation from Berlin to its headquarters in Cologne to have better infrastructure and a fresh start for a brand that has been struggling to find its identity in the recent years. I believe this is a good move. There is questions about Wonder after being mostly inactive on the Heretics bench, and there is questions rising if he still has the hunger to win. He does bring stability to the SK roster, which it has lacked in the recent years in top lane. This new SK roster has potential to do very well in the 2026 season, but we might see them struggle early on with the roster needing to build this in-game synergy. The team's macro plays with veterans Giantx and Wonder is superior to many LEC teams and could push this team with the top 5 finish in the LEC. On the downside, if it is seen that Wunder is not the player he used to be and MKOI and Yopa is a bad fit, the entire season has a chance to go down the drain. I still believe that this year's roster is looking promising and therefore SK Gaming receives a B for their off-season. I see the vision, I'm just unsure if it is the right approach. Next is the Shifters. The former BDS team enters the 2026 season with an identity change and new players being signed. As mentioned earlier, the support Paros departed from the Shifters and joined NaVi and has been replaced by Trumby, who returns to the LEC after a year away. Trumby has been paired with the Korean Paddock, who arrives from the LCK Challengers scene, earning multiple MVPs and deep season runs with the KT roster challenges. This bot lane is an upgrade in experience and carry potentials last year's duo. With that said, Paddock is still a young player and has yet to play a major region starting roster consistently, so his success depends on how quickly he can adapt to the LEC spotlight. Shifters has maintained the top laner Rooster, jungler Bagda, and mid laner Nuke. Keeping these core players gives a sense of continuity and preserves some team identity and synergy. With the bot lane being switched out, they have to carry the team identity until the bot lane is ready to act. Even with these changes, I believe this roster is still a work in progress, lacking a clear elite solo lane carry, and the team will need time to mesh together, especially with the organizational identity and the new bot lane. For this roster, I'm quite unsure if it's that much better than last year, and I believe they should look for an elite mid laner or jungler for the team to be in any contention in the upper half of the LEC. And for these reasons, I give the Shivers a C for their off-season efforts. Team Heretics has seen quite some roster changes, seeing both the top laner and mid laner leave the organization and the ADC flagged also leaving in the off-season. Heretics is now looking for new players. For the top lane, the in-house talent of Tracin, who played for Lost Heretics, which is the Heretics Academy team, was chosen and promoted. Coach Hiddens reportedly passed over several high-profile LCK prospects, but decided on having a day one mentality over mechanics was the better choice. One of the most exciting moves is the reunion of jungler Xiu and the AD carry Ice, who played for BDS. By choosing players that have already known each other and have synergy, this gives the new teammates phase that plagues many rosters. Hidden has a goal to turning Xiu into a primary planner instead of a more reactive jungler. With the loss of Camille, Heretics was on the lookout for a new mid laner and they laid their eyes on the LFL team, Gillian's mid laner Sirin. Initially declining their offer to comfort Heretics, Heretics came back with an offer of an increased salary and system-based environments, making him take the offer. He is expected to be a more stable mid laner than Camille was in 2025, providing a solid foundation for Xiu to play around. According to Coach Hidden, in the display of honesty, he has told the fans to expect the team to look terrible in the early weeks. They ain't practicing for the LEC Versus or the Spring Split, they are practicing fundamentals. While teams like G2 and Karmin corp might start stronger, Heretics believe that their ceiling is higher as they are building from the ground up rather than relying on individuals. Heretics is basically playing Moneyball, signing players that might lack star power but believe this team could see a top 4 finish in the summer split. There is a risk that this slow start expected from Heretics will end up becoming a more permanent bottom finish if they don't step up in late spring and summer split. I like the move. I'm unsure if the team will perform, but I like the risk taking and Heretics trying to build something. They finally stopped trying to be the G2 light and is building some identity and doing their own thing. This team obviously has risk, but also an interesting upside, which is why I believe Heretics deserve a B for their off-season efforts. At last, we have Team Vitality. Vitality is coming off a wild ride for the 2025 season with a mess on the support role, starting off with having Hylissang, who didn't mess well with the team, then signing Niski, who is a former mid laner from the SK Gaming, to the support role, and the intended starter, Fleshy, finally arrived from the Vitality Academy team after some issues. He arrived in the summer split and is now fully ready to engage. After a rough season which shows the better pace in the summer split, but Vitality didn't qualify for Worlds. In this off-season, some changes to the rosters have been made. The biggest upgrade to the team in the off-season is signing mid laner Humanoid, who is one of the more consistent LEC mid laners in the past 5 years with multiple Worlds appearances. Adding such a high impact mid laner as Humanoid could be the push Vitality needs to build upon the momentum they built in the summer split. Signing Humanoid gives the draft option to draft control mages and scaling champions while having the ability to early roams and control the maps. No other roster changes was made to Vitality, but with having a high impact mid laner and finding the support of their choice in Flashy means this team could be the top 3 contender in the LEC. As Vitality is one of the few teams that bet on continuity of the roster, it also gives an advantage from day 1 of the LEC Versus, where they could have higher synergy than most teams with new players. At last, there is a change at the head coach position, promoting Pat. He is known for a more aggressive and draft-centric approach, and with the fearless draft being in the LEC Versus, having a head coach who can quickly adapt to unorthodox picks will be vital. One red flag for this team is Humanoid coming off a rocky 2025 season where he was briefly benched at Fnatic. So if the reunion with Kasi doesn't produce immediate results in the LEC Versus, a worry might start to creep in. I believe Vitality have a high ceiling and if performing well, could see a consistent top 3 finishes, which is also what is expected by signing the veteran Humanoid. Vitality has stepped back from a developing team to a win now team, and not reaching the grand finals in at least one split could be seen as a failure of leadership rather than talent. For their off-season, I give Vitality an A, cause they did what they needed to do. Go find a consistent mid laner and trust in their squad.